We do not have a democracy in this country anymore. People are still voting Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and thinking we have a democracy. But these problems with mica, pyrite, all these other deleterious materials came about as a result of corruption between the political parties who have been in power for the last 50 years and the construction materials sector itself. It's been written about, and there's been huge controversy over the years. But what we operate in this state, and 45 years of experience tells me this, and I can stand over it, we operate an elaborate white-collar criminal protection racket.
And the bottom line here is that the government have very cleverly controlled the narrative of this story to date. And they did so using the Mica Action Group, who, in my opinion, used what I call is the political correctness and the middle class correctness and politeness that's been created in Ireland today. You don't get justice by being nice to somebody. You get justice by fighting back and fighting any way you possibly can so you can get justice.
You're very welcome to the state we're in. It's Thursday, the 7th of July, 2022. And yesterday, the government rushed through legislation through the Dáil following a 2-hour debate to introduce a redress scheme for homeowners who are affected by crumbling concrete. And this bill is shrouded in so much controversy, the least of which is the fact that there were over 100 amendments to the bill, 80 of which had been submitted by homeowners that were affected. And there was just a mere 2 hours to debate this bill. Joe McHugh, TD, the Fine Gael TD from Donegal, lost the party whip because he voted against the government on this bill. I'm joined today by Councillor Frank McBrearty from Donegal, and those of you who are regular watchers of the state we're in will know that I have spoken a number of times to Councillor McBrearty. You're very welcome, Frank.
Well, thank you, Anna, for inviting me on to your programme again.
And I'm also joined by Seamus Maye, and Seamus is also a regular on the state we're in, and he has wide, vast experience in a whole host of areas. He's the founder and chair of the International Small Business Association, and he also has a huge background in the concrete industry. You're very welcome, Seamus.
Thanks again, Anna. Yeah, I'm delighted to join you. Hopefully we'll have a useful chat.
Well, Seamus, if I can begin with you. You have a background in the concrete industry. Just tell me briefly about it.
Yeah, well, my family goes back a couple of generations in the cement, concrete and quarry business. Of course, we actually began in the 50s, and we were quite a respected family in many parts of the country over the years. But we claim, and we're 25 years, nearly 26 years in court now, we claim that we were evicted from the cement, quarry, concrete markets in Ireland on no less than 4 different occasions. We've had a lot of interaction with all the big players, not least CRH PLC. CRH PLC is a defendant in our family's proceedings, along with Readymix PLC and Kilsaran Concrete in the Leinster area, and CPI, which used to be Concrete Products of Ireland, a subsidiary of Grafton Group. And of course, we allege that there's all kinds of criminal activities going on within the sector, and we have it all on affidavit for many years. But unfortunately, to date, we have not been able to progress it because we simply have been held up in the courts. It's unbelievable for that length of time. So I do have a lot of experience in the sector. My family have made tens of millions of concrete blocks in various locations over the years. We've also manufactured in more latter years, but again, quite some time ago, timber frames. We would have made several hundred timber frames very successfully. So that gives me a good insight into what has been going on with the mica and the pyrite.
Well, Seamus, I know that you have been invited by a number of action groups to speak about what is currently happening. And I know that you personally, you're very concerned about this legislation that was rushed through the door yesterday. So perhaps you might elaborate a little bit further on that.
Well, Anna, from start to finish, this whole mica pyrite issue, the way it's been handled is a farce. I mean, I have tried, certainly in the last 12 months, I tried to offer assistance to the people on the working group. This is basically MAG, the Mica Action Group. And I have made proposal after proposal after proposal, but there's no communication. There has been no attempt to formally or informally make contact with me to hear what I would have to say. Many other people have similarly been disowned or blocked by MAG from contributing. And I have to say, I try to keep myself neutral. I'm watching this very closely all this time, and there is nobody as informed as Frank himself. He's incredibly well informed. And like, I'm open to correction on this, but if you just go back to the situation where there was 5 houses purchased by Donegal County Councillor from a developer, and these houses were mica ridden and known to be mica ridden. And you know, every pub and every restaurant and everywhere that people gather, we talk about corruption and we talk about how are we going to make people accountable. And Frank, I know, looking in from County Sligo, I looked in, he was totally isolated by everyone, by all the political parties, the councillors, everybody. Why? Because he wanted to make people accountable for what happened with taxpayers' money buying these houses. And it's been the same. Frank has been excluded from the negotiations, or from contributing to the negotiations with the government. And there's a very simple reason why the likes of Frank and I and lots of other people have been excluded. And I'll elaborate it, just if you just give me a second. Like, yes. We know our stuff. Put very simple, we know our stuff. And I have never seen anything as so naive as the way that this whole mica and pyrite issue has been dealt with by MAG, particularly since June the 15th last year. Like, if I could explain to you, Paddy Diver emerged, and Paddy Diver is very well known, and Paddy Diver became a lightning rod for protesters, and rightly so. And Paddy was calling out all of the corruption and all of the wrongdoing. And Paddy, and it was Paddy alone who brought all those thousands of people to Dublin on the 15th of June last year. Now, they were going to Dublin looking for 100% redress, no less. That's what people were brought to Dublin for. But people did not know that prior to that march taking place, that a small group of people, unelected with no mandate, etc., there were the MAG people, sat down with government and agreed to set up a working group. Now, a working group with no terms of reference, with no experts on it, with nothing. I mean, people actually in Dublin were betrayed in June of last year. And that's where the trouble began. And we've begun on this negotiating. Effectively, as far as I see, the government had friends within the mica and the pyrite sector. And I'm not saying these people aren't well-meaning. I'm not saying that at all. But they were totally naive. And it ended up, as far as I can see, the government negotiating with the government. So the last 12, it's actually 13 months now, has been a waste of time and a farce. This scheme is totally unworkable. Even with all the amendments through, it doesn't begin to tackle the problem.
Okay, Seamus, we'll come back to you in a few moments. Frank, as Seamus mentioned there, you were instrumental in highlighting the purchase of those 5 mica damaged houses in Donegal, and when you tried to raise this at council level, there was a series of events which culminated in you being, I suppose, were suspended from Donegal County Council meetings, and you ended up in the High Court. But I just don't want to go there today. I just want to focus on this whole issue of the legislation that was rushed through yesterday, which homeowners are claiming today falls very far short of compensating them for the damage to their homes. So would you like to elaborate on that point, Frank?
Well, first of all, Anna, I have to concur with everything that Seamus has said so far. And I mean, I'll go back to one point that he did mention. The chairman of the Mica Action Group was approached via telephone and by email by the Minister, Dara O'Brien, on the 13th of June 2021, 2 days before the rally in Dublin. And they engaged on the 13th, 14th and 15th before the rally took place and before the speeches beside where the Dáil was sitting that day down at the convention centre. So the policy of not being honest is one of the biggest failures here to date. But we have to go back to the very beginning of this when it started in 2014 when the Mica Action Group was formed. And it's unqualified homeowners. And what they should have done first and foremost was begin the scientific process to find out what was causing this problem, which would have led then to a proper engineering solution to the whole problem. And we're still here today after the enhanced scheme has been passed into law with no proper engineering solution to the whole problem. Because mica is not the problem in Donegal, and my father's test results, along with some other test results, test suite C in particular, and all the test suite B results sitting in Donegal County Council, 842 in total, are all clearly showing that reactive iron sulfites, and the predominant one out of them, pyrrhotite, is the problem in Donegal. So mica is not the problem in Donegal. Mica has been used as a battering ram to give us a redress scheme that will not fix our problems in Donegal. Because there's only one solution, one engineering solution open to the people of Donegal is full demolition and rebuild. And no engineer is going to be able to sign off on rebuilding on top of foundations that are more likely affected by reactive iron sulfite minerals. Now, on Tuesday, my father had 8 core samples taken from his foundations, which have now been sent to Petrolab. And when those results come back, we will then be able to be in a position to issue the first proper test case in this whole scandal with the legal team that we know and trust for the last 25 years. And that's when the state will start to sit up and realise. Now, I advised the Mica Action Group in 2014 that the only route to get justice in this country was before the courts. And it's a very hard route, and sometimes you don't get justice. And most of the time, if you're lucky, you only get financial justice. And that's what we got when we fought the Guard. We didn't get justice. We got financial justice. But what happened is you couldn't give, I would give it all back if I got the 14, 15 years back that I lost over the head of that. Like, I've known Seamus since 2005 when I went around the country organising anti-corruption meetings. The Irish state do not give their own people justice. And the biggest failure of the Mica Action Group was they didn't realise the type of people they were dealing with, past and present senior civil servants who are there to do a job for government, to protect the departments, and that's what they have done. They were dealing with the enemy. The state are actually the citizens' enemy. And the Mica Action Group believed what they were being told by people who they were meeting, who are retired civil servants doing a job specifically for the government to be able to push through this agenda of an enhanced grant scheme that does not give us the right engineering solution. It's simple. You need the scientific evidence first. Secondly, you need the engineering solution based on the science. And third, you need a redress compensation scheme then when you've got those two in place. And everything else comes after. That's been the failure of this, and it's still the failure today. We still don't have the right engineering solution to the problem in Donegal. And that is a reality that everybody's going to be facing when they enter this enhanced scheme when it opens for business very shortly. And it's a sad reality that homeowners who have no experience, and as Seamus has said, they didn't listen to people like me who have travelled the road. They didn't listen to people like Enda Craig who's travelled the road. They didn't listen to Seamus and many others who have travelled the road. But I have to say this, and I'm not blowing my own trumpet. I have taken on the state at the highest level and beat them. But at the end of the day, I beat them because my father had money to beat them. And the sad reality is, if you don't have money in this country, you will never get justice. And I would be in jail today if it wasn't for my dad and the money that he earned over the years, that he protected his whole family. And not only that, he took on other people's cases and cleared their names as well on top of it. But the good thing about this, my father, when we enter our case, and if we won, it will help every property owner, not just homeowner. It will create an avalanche of civil litigation against the Irish state, which in my opinion will lead to a public inquiry. The government will establish a public inquiry to try and dampen down what we're doing, to reflect away the attention of what the reality of this is, which is a cover-up. And the Irish state are famous for covering up scandals.
Okay, so there's a lot there to unpack, Frank. So basically, what I'm hearing from you is that the legislation rushed through yesterday is framed in such a way that it is going to exclude many homeowners in Donegal because the minerals that are affecting their homes and causing the concrete to crumble are in fact excluded from redress. That's the first thing. And the second thing that you're saying is that legislation is not, in your opinion, the route that homeowners should have taken. The route should have been taken to take a case to court, because that is the only place where it is going to be won. But in order to do that, you have to have a huge amount of money behind you. So not everybody has money to fight their case. And thirdly, yourself and your father are both affected by this great scandal, and you have initiated proceedings. Your father has initiated proceedings in the High Court, and you believe that when you really firmly believe that your father is going to win his case in court, and when he does, then that will create the case law that will enable other homeowners then to...
No, can I just interrupt you a second? My father's case is not actually issued yet. We're 13 months now since my father's blocks were court. And there's a process in the legal process. You don't take proceedings against the state until you have all your eggs in the basket so that you can serve your statement of claim on the Irish state. Now, it's took 13 months to get to where we are at today and get a finalised report for entry to the scheme and a separate report for no entry to the scheme. So there's two engineers' reports here. Now the foundations are being cored, and when the foundations results come back, then we sit down with our full legal team and we decide what format we put the case in. And then we start the proceedings against the Irish state. When we serve those proceedings, the state then will more likely enter what's called an appearance, and we have 21 days then to serve our statement of claim on them after they enter their appearance. There's a whole process here, Mary. Anna. There's a whole process, Anna. And the bottom line is, people don't understand the law in this country because they have never travelled the road that me and others have travelled. And I would say my father's case is at least 8-9 months away from being served on the state at this moment in time. Like, people must remember, it took my father 17.5 years to finally resolve all the issues that we had with the Department of Justice and in Garda Síochána and the Attorney General of Ireland. 17.5 years. And this is the reality what people have to waken up. But in hindsight, if people had listened to my advice, and at that time I didn't know, I had problems with deleterious materials and iron sulfite minerals in my home. But I had a fair idea because of who I bought the products off that I was going to have a problem, but it didn't sink in until 18 months ago when I started doing the proper research that needs to be done when you're taking on a case of this magnitude.
Okay, there's a couple of issues that I want to take up with you. The first one is that you are on the record as saying that everybody must be given 100% redress regardless of the size of their home. And dare I say it, you have quite a large home. So a number of people have said, why should somebody like you receive a huge amount of compensation that's going to have to be footed, the bill is going to have to be footed by the taxpayer? What do you say to that claim?
Well, there's a number of ways to look at this. Like, this has become now a constitutional issue. A person who has a house worth €1 million and a person who has a house worth €100,000 have the same rights. They have the same rights under the Constitution. But in my opinion, I was asked a question by a journalist back a number of months ago, why should the taxpayer pay for the fix my house? Well, the government is supposed to protect my home, the same as everybody else's home and everybody else's properties. But my answer to that journalist was, if you vote for corruption, then that's what you'll get. You'll get corruption. And you'll have to pay for the corruption if you vote for corruption. And until people stop voting for corruption in Ireland, that's what we're facing. We're facing a government who's going to be in power that doesn't give their own people justice when their injustice is committed against them. And that's the reality we're facing here in Ireland, because this is not a republic. This is what I call a banana republic. And the bottom line is the rights of Irish citizens and the rights of Irish property owners and homeowners have been taken away in this scandal to date. And it's been done through political elements that have been involved in this. And I'll give you one example. Padraig McLaughlin, Deputy Padraig McLaughlin, Sinn Féin, put in a parliamentary question to the Minister for Enterprise, which is Leo Varadkar, asking who was on the membership of the National Standards Authority of Ireland Technical Committee TC 063. Now, that's the committee that was established in 2018 to create the Irish Standard for Defective Concrete Blocks, IS number 465 2018 plus A1 2020. Now, I couldn't believe it when I seen the answer. Donegal County Council, Mayo County Council, and the MICA Action Group sit on that committee and helped create the Irish Standard for Defective Concrete Blocks that has excluded the problem that we have in Donegal, which is reactive iron sulfate minerals. And the word certain deleterious materials, which means mica, free muscovite mica, and reactive pyrite, is what's in that IS 465 document. So the MICA Action Group should now publicly state who put them on that committee and why they didn't disclose that to the homeowners that they say they represent, which I don't believe they represent anybody, only their own agendas. And the bottom line here is that the government have very cleverly controlled the narrative of this story to date. And they did so using the MICA Action Group, who, in my opinion, used what I call is the political correctness and the middle class correctness and politeness that's been created in Ireland today. You don't get justice by being nice to somebody. You get justice by fighting back and fighting any way you possibly can so you can get justice. Now, these people would need to answer these questions, and Deputy Padraig McLaughlin would need to answer the question why he hasn't questioned the MICA Action Group Committee, why they didn't disclose this information, because I'm certainly going to put Donegal County Council on the judge's bench when I get into the next council meeting and ask them what member of their staff sat on the technical committee that helped create IS 465. Like, the lies that's been told in this to date and the misinformation is unbelievable. It reminds me of when I was fighting the Guards.
If I could come back to you, Seamus, and there is a huge amount in what Frank has just said. So perhaps you might, comment on some of the issues that he's raised.
I'd have to agree with nearly everything that Frank has said. There's areas that he's way ahead of me on, and there's areas that I would be sort of out of expertise on that maybe Frank just hasn't as good, but we're very much on the same path. But people need to understand, and this is where the naivety came in, and Frank alluded to it there. we do not have a democracy in this country anymore. People are still voting Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and thinking we have a democracy. But these problems with mica, pyrite, all these other deleterious materials came about as a result of corruption between the political parties who have been in power for the last 50 years and the construction materials sector itself. It's been written about, and there's been huge controversy over the years. But what we operate in this state, and 45 years of experience tells me this, and I can stand over it, we operate an elaborate white-collar criminal protection racket. Right? Now, last week in Donegal, Dr. Martina Cleary called out CRH as being the suppliers of at least the majority of the defective products down in Clare, Limerick, and Tipperary. Now, why on earth should taxpayers have to pay to fix these or repair or rebuild these defective houses when the largest company, third largest construction materials company in the world, is well fit, has a balance sheet that can pay back and pay for these damages? Now, I put this question to CRH at the AGM, and I was told emphatically by the chairman, Richie Boucher, that CRH had no issues with regard to liability. They were not liable for defective materials. So what is going on? Why are the suppliers being protected? And okay, some politicians are saying, oh, we're going after the quarries. That's rubbish. They're not going to go after the quarries. Even Sinn Féin, Owen O'Brien the other day in the Dáil said that there was going to be a levy. But what's a levy? A levy is that everyone that buys construction materials in the future pays a levy. So that's consumers that want to build a house or a farm building or whatever it is. But the biggest purchaser of construction materials in the state by far is the state itself. So a levy is only taxpayers paying again, but this time through higher purchase. So that is one issue that has to be looked at. And I don't understand why MAG haven't gone into that, because they're getting a lot of stick from people saying, I shouldn't have to pay. I'm a taxpayer. Why should I have to pay for your big 3,000 square foot house or 2,000 square foot house or whatever? And Frank talked a good lot there about access to justice and the justice system. And like it's well known the difficulties that private individuals and small business have in the courts. I mean, the retired High Court Judge Nicholas Cairns and the retired Supreme Court Chief Justice Frank Clark have all talked about it often. So the bottom line in this country is you cannot go to court and get justice, mostly because of money. And Frank was very straight about his father having the means to do so. But there is a major access to justice problem in this country. Europe has recognized it. They have brought in a directive called EU Directive 2020-1828, and that is a directive on representative actions, which most people call class actions. But the class action family has many different types of representative actions. Now, that has to be, and the government have confirmed that it will be transposed into Irish law by December of this year and up and running by June of next year, which is not a long time away. Now, I've pleaded with MAG, I've pleaded with any of the parties involved in this crisis to campaign to transpose that directive quickly and earlier, which it could have been done, so that people have some realistic chance of getting legal recompense. And don't forget this as well, MAG have never called for full, they call it 100% redress, but they're talking about 100% of the cost of repairing or rebuilding the house. All of these families, all of these households are entitled to substantial damages as well, and would get these damages in any other modern country, such as Britain, right across Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and the US. So we're not even talking about the damages for the mental and financial trauma that these people have been put through for years and years and years. And just to go back to the scheme for a second, this scheme is so ridiculously dysfunctional that it's going to make the Children's Hospital look like excellence personified. They're talking about 2.7 billion. Well, we started off with the correct price for building the Children's Hospital of 400 million. And I checked that, I referenced that with other similar hospitals in Finland, the UK, and America. That was the price that should have been. It's now going to be 2.4 billion. I dread to know what 2.7 billion for mica and pyrite is going to come to. It's literally going to be quadruple. It's going to be 3, 4, 5, 6 times that, and it's going to be the whole scheme is an insanity. I really mean it. And the solution, because you're quite entitled to say, well, what would you do, Seamus? Well, I would I think what needs to be done is there needs to be a compensation tribunal or a tribunal of compensation set up. I think they did it with, was it the hepatitis C before? And I think through that tribunal, there needs to be people from the private sector, skilled procurement people, skilled engineers, skilled quantity surveyors, all of these people, and they should be signing off on everyone's job. And that job is going up, as we know, with the way materials are going, that's going up. And this could be done very, very efficiently through the Tribunal of Compensation, alongside a sort of, for want of a better word, call it a co-op, but it would be government funded. And these experts would you submit your plans, you submit your costings, you submit everything, and they sign them off or maybe change them or whatever. And also they're there and they're able to tell people, look at this is the going rate for a timber frame, you're way out there, you want to go back to the table. So there's a way of doing this that everybody gets their houses rebuilt over a period, but also everybody is entitled to substantial damages. So like, as I said recently, there was a joker about this guy came in to Kerry and he stopped on the side of the road and asked the farmer the directions to Donegal. And the farmer said to him, well, if it was me, I wouldn't start from here. And this is what has happened. The 15th of June last year was the wrong place to start. And, you know, Paddy Diver was then, he was kind of attracted away from the people that originally were helping and promoting him, and he was sucked into the whole MAG thing. The man could have a huge say in what's going on, but he needs to listen and he needs to sit down and look at what's going to happen. There is the capability here to bring down the government. Make no mistake, handled properly, there's a capability to bring down the government, and not just per se to bring down the government, but someone somewhere has to call a halt, because these scandals are going on in every single sector in Ireland, and we're burning billions upon billions upon billions. Like, for example, I don't understand. We're now into our 13th county with mica and pyrite, and they're still allowed to sell blocks. Why haven't the government suspended the sale of concrete blocks, or indeed banned the sale of concrete blocks until such time as we can prove that they're effective and that they're disease-free?
Thank you for that, Seamus. I'm going to leave the final word to you, Frank.
Anna, a number of things that Seamus has talked about. I have a senior counsel's advice, who Seamus would know, concerning multi-actions, class actions, and pathfinder routes, and third-party funding. Third-party funding is illegal in Irish law, and that's the advice on it. In 2018, a bill in Dáil Éireann was rejected for multi-actions. Now, my senior counsel, who I'm very close to, explained to me many times, if we had that route when we were fighting our cases against the state, it would have made it a lot easier for us. But the sad reality is here that that route is not open to anyone in Ireland at this moment in time. And I have to disagree with Seamus on one point, and it's a very small point. I don't believe that the Irish government will implement this. I think they'll do the same as the VRC or the VRT tax, that they'll take the fine of Europe if they don't implement it. And that's a sad reality. It's too small of a country for to take too many class action cases against the state. Like, you only have to look at the way the current class actions are being designed. They're being curtailed to certain cases, not massive cases like this, where you're talking in Donegal, we estimate that there's over 50,000 properties affected by deleterious materials. But I want to touch on one point. mica is not the problem. And I'm engaging with Dr. Andres Lehman. And it was a disgrace that the fact that the mica action group took him to the Dáil committee without no proper organisation, and all he got was less than 3 minutes to explain what deleterious materials and reactive iron sulfide minerals actually are. Because mica does not cause swelling or cracking. It's not a reactive mineral. It only absorbs water, moisture, and could be affected by freeze thaw. There is no peer review studies on mica. There's no peer review literature on mica or accredited to anyone in the world. Not like Dr. Andrews Lehman and many other experts who are accredited to peer review literature written about reactive iron sulfide minerals and their effects in Canada, the US, Switzerland, Norway. There's a fantastic Nordic report into the issues of iron sulfide minerals in Norway, and people should read it and educate themselves. I have read every single piece of document that I could read about the deleterious materials and iron sulfide minerals. But what a lot of people don't realize here is, Anna, I come from a construction background. My family have been in construction for 60 years. My father's an ex-tunnel man, an ex-contractor in Glasgow. I spent 10 years in the UK myself working in the construction industry. I have 3 brothers, contractors, 2 in the US, 1 here. My family are very well known in the construction industry outside of Ireland. We're better known for the nightclub business in Rafo, which my father started when he came back from Scotland after giving up a very successful civil engineering company. But the thing about it is, my own background in construction has meant me to be able to learn the issues about what the effects, the durability that the durability that concrete has when bad contaminated aggregates and deleterious materials and minerals that are not supposed to be used in the manufacturing of concrete, and how it affects concrete. People need to start educating themselves, because education leads to knowledge and knowledge leads to power. But the reality here is there's too many people making money out of this that doesn't deserve to make money out of this. And that's what my father famously said outside Dáil Éireann when he was trying to uncover corruption in Donegal, Garda Síochána. People are making money out of this that don't deserve to be making money out of this.
That note,
Anna.
we shall conclude. I want to thank you, Seamus, and Frank, for, I suppose, the great enlightenment that I've had this evening chatting to both of you. To those of you who have been watching, I want to thank you for watching. I think that this is a story that is only going to grow in the months and years ahead. Sadly, it would appear that there's going to be no quick fix solution for the thousands upon thousands of people that are affected right across the country by this crumbling concrete. And it would appear that the legislation rushed through the Dáil yesterday is going to, I suppose, make the situation worse rather than better. Compass Media is a news platform that is completely independent. We don't receive any funding, and we will never ask you for money. But what we do ask you is to please like and share our page, and also like and share this video to get it out to a much wider audience. Once again, thank you for watching, and until we meet again on The State We're In, Bannock Day Arif Golair.